Hello and welcome everyone to the live CASA Advocacy Update podcast. I hope everyone can hear and see us okay. I believe Alex has the right internet this week, all hooked up. That's what we're hoping for. So I hope that we're all good. I hope that everyone out there is doing well on this wonderful Saturday. How are you, Alex? How are you, Kristen?
I'm good.
I'm hanging in there.
Okay, how about we do this? Kristen, how are you on this wonderful Saturday?
Good. We got decent weather. Tomorrow's Mother's Day, so hopefully I'll get to relax a little bit. I know I'm gonna see my kids this week. Otherwise, not much has changed. Having some fun on Twitter lately.
Well, if I don't get to talk to you tomorrow, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
First and foremost. But yeah, Alex, how are you doing on this wonderful Saturday?
Hanging in there. Also, happy Mother's Day, Kristen, and
thank you
for joining us again. Yeah, I'm hanging in there. I'm not going to retell my gross story about.
Oh man, it's really good though.
Okay, so the short story version is I had an obstructed salivary duct, and the situation resolved itself this morning. So that's I'm looking forward to not feeling crappy about that anymore. So that's the drama that
we also came up with a really great band name out of this story.
So. Yeah, Mouth Nugget.
Mouth Nugget. Yeah,
that was yours.
Yeah. I'll take full credit. And anybody is free to use that. If you're looking for a band name right now, specifically if you play like 2-minute speed punk or something like that, Mouth Nugget is a fantastic name for a band. Yeah, I am all about that.
I don't know.
But yeah, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I guess we'll just hop right into things. Alex, would you like to go through our legislative rundown here, what we got going on this week, what people need to keep their eyes on?
Yeah, well, sort of a lot of updates. We had a couple of hearings on Friday, so those things are moving forward. Let's get the screen up here. There we go. All right, so the first at bat here is going to be Maine. Maine is looking at a flavor ban. And I went to the trouble of queuing this up, so let's just get the tab. They had a hearing on yesterday, Friday the 7th. This is 6 hours. It was a 6-hour long hearing, and I think it was sort of like 50 people on both sides. I did not tune in to hear most of it, but so the hearing was held, and at the conclusion, they decided to move the bill to a work session where they will decide whether or not this moves to a vote in the House. And that work session is scheduled for next week on the 12th. And we're still encouraging folks to, make contact with your lawmakers. We don't have this set up as one of those automated kind of email blasty point and click activism kind of campaigns just yet. But if it does move to the full House, we'll want to break out all the stops, pull out all the stops. There
we go.
So that is Maine LD 1550, kind of sort of moving forward. And certainly a lot of viewpoints were heard on Friday. And that's a flavor ban. The next issue is going to be Minnesota. This is complicated because it's budget stuff, and this is moved to a conference committee. I believe the bill is SF 961. Still for Minnesota residents only. Contact all the members of the taxes conference committee. We've provided a comma delimited email list here. Just copy and paste that into the to section of your email, and it'll send it to all of them. And of course, phone calls are also very effective. Talking to a real live human being tends to get that message home a little stronger. And of course, all of the contact information for people on the taxes committee is on our engagement. So please take advantage of that if you live in Minnesota, and reach out and tell them that expanding the 95% wholesale tax to include devices is just outrageous and totally unnecessary. In particular, I mean, just add 95% to your mod that already costs $50 to $120, or if you're one of those high-end collectors, several $100s. And
yeah,
and we've included the taxes talking points here to help people craft their messages. And if you're just feeling lazy, or you just like what we write, we've got a sample message that you can customize and, of course, copy and paste that into your email. So that's Minnesota. I don't have much insight into that other than the committee sort of met all week and certainly discussed this. I don't have any insights as to what they discussed or decisions or where they are in sort of the conference committee is all about kind of harmonizing the House and the Senate versions of bills. So I don't have any insight as to where that is in the process, but certainly they spent the past 2 weeks going over these things, and so we're getting closer and closer to a decision here. And of course, any communications that Minnesota residents can send to members of the taxes committee will be helpful. Moving right along here, Texas. Texas is looking at a 5 cent per milliliter tax on e-liquid. And of course, every time we bring up a small tax on e-liquid, we are keen to remind people that it may sound like a small tax, but of course, first of all, it adds up pretty quick. It's an extra $1.30 or $1.50, something like that, for a 30 milliliter bottle, double that for 60, and so on. So there is obviously an extra expense. I remember a time when people were pretty bent out of shape about paying $29 for a 30 ml bottle of premium e-liquid. So obviously, people who vape are very price sensitive, and there's really no reason for Texas or any state to heap an extra tax on these products, which ultimately discourages people from using them. We have the evidence to back that up from the previous state, Minnesota, which enacted its own, what turned out to be a very small tax on vapor products, but discouraged more than 30,000 people from switching. So this had a hearing this week on the 7th, on Friday, and the bill is moving forward. And you can read the full bill text. This is the engrossed version. So I didn't put things side by side this morning to see what they had added or changed. But this will be moving right along. And actually, did I not update this? So I think I need to change our little icon here to show that this is passing or has passed the House. So we'll continue following this through the process. If it in Senate, there will be committee hearings and another opportunity for people to speak up at a hearing, and we'll keep all of that up to date on our call to action. And that is again.
So wait, this passed the House or is moving to the House?
I believe. Well, I included a handy link here. So it got all of its readings in the House, and usually when a bill is reported engrossed, that means they're kind of done with it in that chamber, and it goes on to the next place or the governor's desk. So since this is a House bill, it's only ever been in the House. I'm not sure if there is a companion bill in the Senate. Usually that kind of speeds things along if both of them pass, right, end up with the same language at the end, and then they can just. Not all states do it that way, but I know New Jersey does that. So right now, I'm reading this as it is going to be passing the House, and we can expect to see it in the Senate next. But we'll come back to that as it moves along, and certainly there will be another opportunity for people to engage. So that was HB 211, and.
Texas.
Not last and not least, Alaska, HB 110. also, I believe, had a hearing on Friday. That's correct. As a result of this hearing, the bill was set aside for consideration at a future hearing. Nothing scheduled at this time. I believe I'm at that point where I'm starting to get all my states mixed up. So forgive me if I screw this up. But I believe Alaska's session ends on the 19th. So they've got a really limited amount of time to get this thing passed if they're going to do it. It is not impossible, but all of that to say this could move very quickly depending on how motivated the Alaska legislature is. This is a 75% wholesale tax, and that covers everything. It's not just e-liquid, it's devices, right, components, and so on. Yeah, that's where it is. I should probably go back and check and see where SB 45 is. Again, if you have two identical bills racing through the legislature, sometimes they don't even bother with crossover, and it just, if it passes both chambers with the language intact, it'll go straight to the governor. So that's not something I checked up on this morning, but I will. And we are obviously keeping track of this. So if you're in Alaska, stay tuned. This thing is still moving, and we're trying to rally the troops here and get people engaged. The next one, actually, I need to go back to our list. This is an early enough heads up for Delaware. Thank you for catching this, Kristen. Delaware's Attorney General penned an op-ed last week, I believe. May 5th. Promoting a flavor ban for Delaware. She mentioned that. I knew I was going to forget this representative's name. Melissa Minor Brown is leading the charge in all of this. I combed through her state website today and did not find a bill that she has sponsored for a flavor ban. But I did find it interesting. While Delaware may soon be talking about a flavor ban bill, this same Representative Minor Brown, is sponsoring legislation to create a fund to allow the Department of Services for Children, Youth, and their families to award competitive grants for targeting provision of services that have been proven effective in helping juveniles avoid contact with the criminal justice system. I thought that was pretty interesting, considering that she may be putting her name on a bill that will essentially create a bunch of new criminals, right. The possession and sale of flavored products. I did not go back and check Delaware's whether or not Delaware has a purchase, use, and possession law for minors, but that's certainly something to look for. Regardless of whether you're talking about purchase, use, and possession, selling flavored products will become a criminal offense. And of course, when we talk about an informal marketplace, it is individuals, sometimes juveniles, who are the informal retailers. So great to see that she's got her focus on the right place and sort of providing resources so that kids don't end up having these unnecessary interactions with law enforcement. But at the same time, it seems a bit counterproductive to create a new crime that young people will likely be wrapped up in. So excuse me. That's Delaware. Be on the lookout for a flavor ban bill. We're certainly keeping our ears to the ground on this one as well. The other bit of legislative news that I don't have an article to bring up for. Oh, wait, I do.
It's an old one, but yeah.
It's an old one. It's from December. And this has been, on the, let's see, there we go. So this has been certainly on the books for a while. It's been in the media for a while. Denver is looking at a flavor ban. Yeah. So this has been being discussed in Denver for a little while now, but I did see another organization putting together their own campaign And so it seems like things are heating up, and this might be moving toward something. So just wanted to mention it and put it on people's radar. Obviously, if this heats up anymore, we'll probably put out our own engagement. But if you live in Denver, several communities in Denver have already prohibited flavors or enacted taxes. That was something new that came out, I think, last session, allowing local governments to enact their own taxes on tobacco products. And certainly they are taking advantage of that, especially now when all kinds of, everybody needs to generate some form of revenue in the wake of the pandemic. So anyway, flavor ban, Denver, Colorado, be on the lookout. We are. And I believe, unless you guys have anything else to add, that ends the legislative rundown for the week.
We do have a question about the PACT Act and what's going on with the post office. I know we touched on this. Is that last week or the week before?
Last week.
But maybe we can do a quick for Nick. He might have missed the show. I don't know if
Are we going to be touching base on the PACT Act and the fact that the United States Postal Service did not meet the April 26th deadline and what that means for consumers?
Yeah, we definitely touched on this last week, Nick, but
So we also updated the engagement. I'm going to bring it up here so that we can sort of show this. I'm fairly certain. I know that we updated this because we were getting these questions last week. What this means, so here's the engagement if you want to check out that explanation. But essentially, it just means it's delayed. For the time being, it's as I understand it, USPS is still allowing companies to ship direct to consumer, but, and this is the big but. All of the other parts of the bill are in effect. So if you're going to ship direct to consumer, you have to be compliant with the PACT Act in the states where you are shipping.
The filing, the taxes, the register, all of that stuff still applies.
Right.
It's just the mail ban itself is being delayed.
Right.
Yeah, but that stuff is all industry, not consumer. You guys don't have to register anything as a consumer from the consumer side.
Right.
You guys don't have to do anything. So, but it could affect what kind of liquids are available in your local vape shop. For a while, it's going to mean that some online stores are going to keep shipping until basically they think they don't have to at all. So you might be from a consumer standpoint, you're going to see that we're probably going to have access a little bit longer than we thought you would.
It's possible, but again, the big barrier here is PACT Act compliance, right. And that's something that does actually require a lot of work and some resources, so that may actually prevent a lot of online shippers from doing things because of that compliance issue. But as far as the USPS is concerned, no prohibition on mailing products has gone into effect. It does not mean, I think, one of the questions that sort of spurred a lot of this on was, I think there were people who were saying that because they missed the deadline, it sort of nullified the law. It does not. All it is a delay.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, it was not our intention to delay implementation of the rule by sending tons of comments to the USPS. Our intention for doing that was simply to meet the request of the USPS, which was many people, I'm sure, have different experiences and perspectives on shipping vapor products through the mail. And so, just acknowledging that the USPS is not going to think of everything while they're going over this rule, having all of that myriad perspectives is very good for them, and to hopefully make a rule. It's bad that vaping is being, or shipping vapor products is being banned, but perhaps with enough comments and enough perspective on this, they will get something that will work within the confines of the law. So
USPS received thousands of comments just through CASA. So anybody watching out there who submitted your comments through our calls to action, thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It was over 9,000 comments.
Yeah.
Which I believe is a majority of the comments that were submitted to USPS came through our engagement. So thank you everybody for participating. But yeah, like I said, the intent was not to delay. That's how it worked out. And so that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah. There's definitely been a lot of discussion about it being, null and void, and somehow USPS, delaying this for clarification and things like this somehow like overturns a congressional act. Like, no, it does not. It's just a delay.
It's just a delay, and that's typical. If anybody who's been following this particular issue for a while knows that, for example, FDA does not really hit deadlines unless they're court ordered.
Yeah,
and even then, they do require some wiggle room.
Yeah.
So.
So absolutely. All right.
And if you have questions for us, can you be sure to do like at CASA? So, because I know sometimes you're just talking to each other. So if you want me to put the question up to us, put at CASA on there, please.
I think that's it though, that I see right off the bat. So I guess we can kind of move along. If anybody in chat does have questions, at CASA or put CASA right in your question, and we will absolutely pull it up and get to it during the show, or at the end. We tend to do a little Q&A, a few minutes at the end for people to ask any questions there as well. We do a little block for everybody. So go ahead, feel free to throw your questions in chat. We'll try to get to them now, or we'll get to them by the end of the show. Absolutely. Sweet. All right, Alex, where are we going next? What's next on the agenda today?
Well, I figured, as we talked in the pre-show, I figured I'd bring up this tweet and let's see here. So we got Professor Glantz is at it again.
Oh man, we're gonna give him some oxygen today.
And so I didn't actually look over this one, but I know Kristen has. So Kristen, what's Professor Glantz up to again?
Well, which tweet do you have? I can't see.
I have this is the tweet from Alex Wodak. This was the Glantz study about I guess relapse that we were talking about earlier. Uh-oh.
Okay, yeah, I twisted it. I had my throat got weak. I tweeted about this too. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I tweeted about this
you may be coming down with a bad case of Alex's internet right now.
Uh-oh.
Oh no. Don't tell
okay,
me.
You're back.
Am I here?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay. My voice keeps cutting out because all of a sudden I just got this dry, and I started having a coughing fit. It was crazy.
I recommend H2O.
I know, that's why I drank like half my bottle just while I was leaning off the screen.
Yeah, dihydrogen monoxide. It's a fantastic chemical. I drink it every day.
Funny, I just got in a conversation about chemicals in water. So what's going on is that he just put out this tweet saying that hey, look, people who vape or former smokers are twice as likely to relapse back to smoking. And if you don't read it carefully, it sounds like vapors are twice as likely to relapse back to smoking. But what it is people who used to smoke, no longer smoke, and long-term former smokers, meaning it's been a while since they've smoked, came back would start vaping. And if they started vaping, then they were more likely to relapse to smoking. So it was the only significant data that they got was not with people who quit smoking with vaping, but people who had quit smoking a long time ago. All of a sudden they decided to vape, and they were 2 times more likely than people who quit smoking and didn't decide to vape to relapse. Well, it makes sense, because why would somebody who quit smoking a long time ago suddenly be interested in vaping? Probably because they feel like they're going to relapse.
Is there any information in that study regarding like the amount of time said people did vape for before going back to smoking? Because this could be a experiencing stress in your life, experiencing something like that. As a former smoker or a person who used to smoke, that this is a stress relief. You've been there. You've done this. You decide, okay, I'm going to go try this instead. You're like, meh. maybe this isn't for me, and you just, a day later you go buy a pack of cigarettes,
Right.
because there's no attempt to quit. There's no like, I'm gonna make this switch effort. You may be just looking to use nicotine and then switching, falling back to what or something like that. So
yeah, the other thing that I tweeted about was that there's a lot of limitation. It's a long
from Glantz.
Well, it's not his study.
Oh,
he's just tweeting about the study and listing it with his words.
I see.
So yeah, he just said, "Oh, look at this. This is not even me. This is somebody in Brazil saying where they're trying to they want to ban vape." And that's the funny thing, is that from this limited, lots of significant limitations, and plus that it was only in the only significant, statistically significant results that they got for risk were in people who were former smokers, longtime former smokers who decided to vape. They tended to relapse more than people who were former smokers didn't decide to vape. It's just one of those things, why are we, and it was nothing to do. They didn't find any statistically significant things with people who were smoking, picked up a vape, and quit smoking with vaping. There was no statistic, that was not significant. So it's of course, a lot of vapors are misreading it.
Gap in time between when somebody had quit smoking, then they decide to, for whatever reason, again, there's a plethora of reasons why people decide, to use nicotine in one fashion or another. At some point in time later on down the road, they picked up a vape, they didn't stick with it, and they went back to smoking.
Yeah, and
there could be a lot of, there could be a lot of things going on there. There could be support from vape shops. There could be, lack of support in general. There could be misinformation about it. There's all sorts of reasons why that may go. And I think, if, again, people go, okay, well, I know I get this certain amount of relief or stress relief or whatever there may be from smoking. I gave this a try. I had no encouragement. I had no support. I had no X, Y, and Z. I fell back to what I know.
Yeah, I mean, up to 30 years after quitting, there's like 10% of people still are at risk of, former who had quit smoking are still at risk of relapsing.
Yeah,
10%. So even 30 years later, so there are people who will relapse even if they've quit for over 12 months or 2 years or whatever. And that's one of the limitations, is that they don't know why people picked up that vape. They don't know how long the people vape before they went to smoking. They don't know what kind of devices they used before they went from vaping to smoking. But comparing it, one thing they also didn't look at is how many people who were former smokers picked up a vape and remained exclusive vapors. Mm. Let's compare those two. Why are we comparing it to people who had no urge to smoke or vape? We should be comparing to the other people who picked it up and were successful and
it seems like a predetermined outcome that we made work.
Yeah.
I mean, while we're talking
from him.
While we're talking about this, I'm sort of reminded about the conversation about dual use. And, if you are someone who's smoking and vaping, not at the same time, it's just throughout your day, you use vapor products and you also smoke.
Maybe at the same time.
You're considered a dual user. The messaging around that has been, a lot of the focus has been on how it's more harmful. The people who vape and smoke are exposing themselves to more harm than someone who's just smoking. That's the totally wrong message to fixate on. I mean, first of all, I don't know exactly how that's true. I'm not going to put it out of the realm of possibilities, but typically people who are dual using are reducing the number of cigarettes they're smoking. I don't see how that can't be a positive.
And more often than not, that's just a transition period.
Exactly.
Right? That's all it is for most people. For me, that transition period was 6 days, but I know people who that transition period was a year, 2 years, where, they would vape while they were home, smoke while they were at work, and then kind of slowly over time got to the point where they just finally put down the cigarettes. And everyone's transition timeline is different, but we just focus on just that bit and we make it this big bad deal. And we don't respect people's own, their own timelines.
So I think, you know, the important kind of takeaway that I'm getting from this, and I haven't read the very detailed critique of the study here, but you know, messaging really is important here. And so if we're talking, whether we're talking about dual use or relapse prevention, as you were saying, Logan, you know, we don't know what kind of support people were getting from a vape shop or their friends or whatever the state provides. And so I think it's really important for, you know, at least public health people to kind of harmonize their messages, move away from discouraging people or trying to scare people away from these products. And it's more along the lines of supporting them for making the decision to use a smoke-free product and saying, you know, yes, you can stick with this. You know, what people have experienced in vape shops is just, I mean, it's the simple line of like, think about flavors that you like in the real world and try that in an e-liquid. And that may be just having that flavor alone, almost regardless of nicotine content, may help you stay away from smoking. And so it's the same kind of issue that we're having with dual use. And I really wish that we would have more research into this possibility of relapse prevention.
Yeah, and
I think it's
last week or the week before, I believe we talked about behavioral support regarding it increasing your chances with NRTs and things like that, that it increases your chances of successfully quitting smoking, and how in the realm of, you know, vaping and vape shops, all too often a vape shop is also that behavioral support. It's that social network. It's that social support factor. And yeah, if you know, somebody is not getting that and they're just seeking nicotine in one fashion or another, and there's no extra support, they're also getting bombarded by misinformation and bad media and all these other things. It doesn't surprise me, you know, that someone who may be looking for some form of, you know, to use nicotine is then going, well, I'm just going to fall back to what I know, you know. Yeah.
And that's the word prevention, what Alex meant. I thought that was very ironic because somebody in the Twitter verse with me was talking about, well, what's the success rate for NRT for former smokers? He brought up NRT, and I said, hey, that's a good question. Is NRT approved to market as a smoking prevention product? Because that's essentially what this study is expecting from vaping. Not help people quit, but prevent them from smoking. I mean, think about that. That's what they're criticizing for, but it didn't prevent them from smoking, supposedly, you know, allegedly.
I think if I can attempt to answer your very good question here is, well, first of all, no, I don't think that nicotine replacement therapy is allowed to be marketed that way. Mm-hmm. As far as I know, the only major significant change in the guidelines was back in, I think, 2013. The FDA changed the guidance for what manufacturers could advise consumers on how to use this, and that was that you can, it's instead of picking a quit date, you pick a start date, and you can start dual using nicotine replacement therapy and replacing the number of cigarettes you have in a day with a piece of nicotine gum, and you can use it for as long as you need to.
Right, which is, and it's one of those things you hear a lot when we talk about dual use, and like when people try to, you know, create this bad messaging around it. I hear all too often, well, people who are dual using are increasing their nicotine levels. They're taking in all this extra nicotine, and like you just said, FDA has said pick a start date. Can, you know, if you're going to continue to smoke, just pick a start date to start using these products. It's okay if you dual use the approved products that we've said you can dual use.
And they can advertise that.
You can't use these other products. Yeah,
I've seen ads that say, you know, do it, you know, even if you just, you know, stop smoking one cigarette, you know, I mean, I've seen ads from the companies. So that's something I think a takeaway from this study could be for vape shops. You see a lot of vape shops who say, well, if you don't smoke, you know, you shouldn't vape, so stay out of my store. Well, you've got a guy who quit smoking years ago. Obviously, he's in your store for a reason, you know, and you say, oh, no, I'm not going to sell to you because you don't currently smoke. So where's he going to go? He's going to go down to the gas station. He's going to go buy some cigarettes or a Juul, you know. Think about it, guys.
So that actually reminded me. I don't have it.
You were frozen for me. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. So you're the one. You've got the bad internet.
I'm the only one not
in
freezing.
the bad internet roulette today.
Oh no.
So I had just seen a tweet from Gregory Conley earlier before we came on, and he was sharing a picture of an IQOS sign outside of a gas station, I think in Florida. And of course, the question was, IQOS is for sale in Florida now. And one of the questions under the tweet was, I thought that they were only going to be selling IQOS in dedicated IQOS stores. But the real question for me is, as part of their modified risk application, IQOS is, and this is, I think it's not just a part of the application, it's part of the whole model of selling IQOS. They have this commitment. It's like a 45-minute process to buy an IQOS at an IQOS store. And one of the questions that they ask you up front is, do you currently smoke? And if you don't, they won't sell to you. That's their commitment. When I had an opportunity to speak in support of the modified risk tobacco product in front of the FDA's TPSAC committee, the Tobacco Product Advisory and Scientific Committee, TPSAC, Tobacco Product Scientific Advisory Committee. There we go. One of the things was, we as CASA questioned the wisdom of only selling to people who smoke, because you have plenty of people, as this study illuminates, who are at risk of going back to smoking. Shouldn't they have the ability to stop at a smoke-free product first?
Yeah. Why is causing harm to your body a prerequisite for use of this?
Yeah, the one parallel that always jumps out at me when I hear things like that is, my experience in substance use disorder recovery, or what we used to just call it rehab. When I was in rehab, I definitely heard stories from people who they had issues with pain pills, and they tried to check into a treatment facility, and they were turned away because it was, just pain medication. And so this one person in particular went out and bought 2 bottles of wine and chugged them down and went back drunk and said, am I screwed up enough now for you to help me? And that's kind of been an issue in the recovery world. And I imagine some of that kind of bleeds over into just about any discussion about substance use. But yeah, it's insane that you would have to have this prerequisite of doing a bunch of harm to your body before someone's going to listen to you, or give you advice about how to maybe prevent that. But still, get the nicotine and get it in a much cleaner and safer way. It's kind of backwards.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And talking about addiction centers, rehabs, just a key point, a lot of those places will actually force people who use drugs to self-abstain for up to 2 weeks before they will even allow them into a program. So you're forcing harm, potentially very lethal harm, on somebody who is just seeking to get help and relief from even getting into a program that's offering help and relief. And it's really detrimental. It's really dangerous, and it's terrible.
Or the ones that expect people to quit smoking before they can go through rehab too.
People who are seeking help, like they're trying to get help. Why are they expected to do this on their own before they come to get help? And I don't know. It's just a mess. It's like, why would I even come to you for help if you're just going to tell me to go do it myself to begin with? Like, what is?
Yeah, if I could have stayed sober for 2 weeks in a row, I wouldn't have.
You'd go, oh wow, I'm super proud of myself. I guess I don't need this rehab center anyway. Like it's so backwards, man. It's absolutely asinine.
Yeah,
and that's funny because I just got in a conversation with somebody who was talking about how, again, nicotine is more addictive than heroin, and and I said, and actually he said, more dangerous than heroin. And I said, how? Okay, well, where's the science supporting that it's more dangerous than heroin? I'd like to see this. He's like, well, no, I meant more addictive, and I really meant cigarettes. And he's like, I have, it's just anecdotal, but I have friends who've quit the drugs, but said that quitting smoking was harder. And I just replied to him. I don't think he's replied back to me, but I just replied to him. I said, okay, well, you've just managed to quit something that really could pretty much kill you today versus something that might kill you with a heart attack or cancer in 30 years. Which one's going to be your priority?
So I have a little lived experience here. I was a heavy meth user for a long time when I was younger. About 8 years, no longer using meth, but I was. And when I was going through that process of getting off of methamphetamine, I was very, very adamant that I was not going to quit smoking. That this was like, okay, I will abide by whatever I'm being told. Maybe this is bad for me. I'm having a problematic relationship with this drug. Things are going downhill for me right now, but you're not going to take my cigarettes. That was a very thing that I put my foot down. We all have vices. We all have something that we need. And if at the same time I was being told that I needed to quit smoking too, I probably would have just said, F all of you. And I would have just kept doing what I was doing, because it's just additional pressure. It's just additional expectations that were expected from people who are already working towards a goal. And then we're lumping additional things onto it. And it's just a recipe for disaster, you know?
And that's really where, you know, and that's what the science is, that nicotine is more addictive than heroin, other than rat studies, which those are.
Oh, we lost her.
Been disproven too. But that's really what the people who are addicted to both. Oh, again? Jeez, Louise. But that's, where did you lose me at? But that's what the actual science supposedly is that they talked to addicts and said, okay, well, which was harder to quit, you know, heroin or nicotine? And they said, well, you know, I was able to quit heroin, but I still haven't been able to quit cigarettes. So
and cigarettes. I think for a lot of people, I'm going to advise that we don't use the word addict. Just a terrible term, but either way.
Yeah. But that's what that was their term. I don't like
that. I think for a lot of people, just again, from a personal perspective, I don't want to talk for other people who use drugs and smoke, but for me, it was like I still needed something, and this was my something, and I'm going to keep doing this. Like I'm doing all these other things. Give me a little credit here. I'll work on that later. Let me address what I need to address now. You know, and let me do this my way, my path of recovery, not yours, my path to recovery. I'm going to do this my way. And I think when we respect people's autonomy and we treat them with dignity in that fashion, that their chances of meeting their goals successfully is much better than applying additional pressure and all the additional expectations and all of these things. Just respect people's autonomy and show them dignity and respect.
And I just wanted to point that out because
I want to jump in on this topic because I certainly have some thoughts and my own lived experience with this as well. First of all, you know, this idea that nicotine is somehow magically more addictive than anything else, I think is absurd. There are reasons for why it is difficult to get away from smoking. For one, it's perfectly legal and people still do it out in public. If someone using heroin or any really illicit substance, typically you're doing that in private. You have to kind of pick a place and time to do it. Regardless of whether it's the best place or time to do it, that's how people use drugs, in relative secret. And so you don't see people walking down the street smoking a crack pipe, or, you know, depending on where you, I mean, if you live in San Francisco, obviously you're seeing a lot of open drug use, but it's typically it's different. It's a lot more just behind a curtain somewhere, and it doesn't have the same kind of out in the open social type of use as cigarettes do. And when if you've ever smoked cigarettes, then you know that for a lot of people, seeing someone smoking or smelling someone smoking can create that sense of craving. It's called being triggered. And we experience cigarette smoke all over the place. And so it is incredibly difficult to get away from other people smoking, which is why, and this is no mystery to the tobacco control folks, it is why they push things like place bans and all of the coercive measures in place to push smoking further and further to the curb or the margins of society, because they know it's not that nicotine is particularly more addictive than other drugs. It's that it's everywhere. And the less that people are reminded about it, that's why they've gone after marketing. That's why all these people are so gung-ho about getting smoking out of movies. I remember, when I was a heavy smoker, seeing someone on a TV show smoking a cigarette made me want to go out and have a cigarette. That's just how triggers work. That's how the addiction to smoking works. And again, a lot of drug policy folks have gone into this in detail about it's not the drug, but it's the route of delivery. That's the difference between cocaine and crack. Crack isn't special. It just gets to your brain faster. It's the same molecule. So it's the same thing with smoking. We know this within the nicotine category. Cigarettes, they get the nicotine to your brain the fastest. The next down on that list, I believe, is going to be e-liquids with nicotine salts and a high enough concentration of nicotine. And it comes close, but no cigar. And then you go down, of course, cigars and other oral tobacco products. They're a lot slower in nicotine. And so again, nicotine doesn't have any special powers. It's the route of delivery and the fact that it's everywhere that kind of keeps people coming back.
There's also a lot that I don't want to say a lot, but there's also more to cigarettes than, say, vapor products. I mean, we can go down the row of like MAOIs and things like that that are also something that people seek. We could go into people that have cognitive impairments where nicotine is crucially benefiting them. And that also makes, quitting that much more difficult, especially when you're attempting to quit and you're noticing my focus is off, my concentration is off, I'm dealing with all these other things. And you know that it's better when you smoke. That also makes that quitting much harder. So yeah, quitting smoking and smoking in general is a complex thing.
Yeah. And my experience in treatment was, as I think Kristen was sort of explaining, the real urgency was to stop using the drugs that were going to kill me quickly. Yeah. And if smoking cigarettes was going to keep me in that treatment facility, then they were all about it. We had a gazebo where we could smoke. We had the smokers outpost where we could put our butts. Frequently set that thing on fire because everybody smokes in rehab. And they did offer resources. You could go to a
Pennsylvania.
You could go to a Nicotine Anonymous meeting if you wanted to. And so, but it wasn't, we weren't pressured to do it. It was just recommended. I'm not sure how it is now because I know that the facility where I went, they're actually involved in a lot of anti-tobacco stuff in schools, providing a lot of misinformation, coercive type materials to young people. So I don't know if the treatment facility is still run that way, but when I was there, it was good. And I found it to be a benefit.
I really wanted to, can I real quick? I really wanted to say something because about this because I see vapors, all advocates all too often parroting out these anti-nicotine and tobacco zealot talking points. And one of them is nicotine is more addictive than heroin. And I see them say it all the time. And I just want people here to know that there is no scientific backing to that statement as that. Okay, so stop saying that, please. Just stop saying that. There's nothing to prove that. And I want to real quick. I was rolling my eyes a little bit, and I hate to. That wasn't at you, Alex, because I'm seeing some of the conversation. And Nick, I'm sorry to pick on you, but this is common, so it's not your fault, and I'm not blaming you. But he's kind of joking here, but he was talking about how tobacco companies literally had their scientists go in labs and say, hey, can you make this more as addictive as you can? And that they added 7,000 chemicals and they added close to 60 carcinogens, including arsenic. And Nick, none of that's true. That's just not true.
That's 7,000 chemicals. Those are byproducts of combustion.
Yeah, I mean, if you went and wadded up your kid's homework and smoked it, you're going to get like 7,000 chemicals. Yeah, I mean, it's
burned, dried, cured plant material.
But so, I mean, to his point, though, and I think to a lot of other people's point, there are chemicals added to cigarettes, and we know e-liquid to make that absorption in your brain faster to make sure that you do get that buzz. Correct?
Yeah. I mean, when we're talking about salts and benzoic acid, it's really about pH. So that way, if you were to just vape Freebase 50 milligram, it's very harsh, right? Very, very harsh. And a lot of people can't handle it, but they could actually use that hit of nicotine, like we talked about, that nicotine peak that gets you closer to a cigarette. And the closer you get to that, the more likely you are to go, okay, I can use this. This kind of feels the same. That's a good thing for people trying to quit. But it's really about pH and making that absorption easier on a person to get that level. Does that make sense? That's really kind of the basis of my understanding, at least with benzoic acid and higher milligram nicotine salts, is getting that it makes it less harsh for you to be able to take in those higher milligram levels. And before we exit, I guess the parallels in smoking and drug use and substance use, which is actually something I've been doing a little digging and research on. This is from 2002 to 2014. Researchers, this is a little snippet from a piece that I found. Researchers analyzed data from 725,010 Americans aged 12 and older in the National Survey on Drug Use and Health for 2002 to 2014, and they found that more than half of individuals with a substance use disorder, 56%, reported cigarette use in the past month, compared with 18% of those without a substance use disorder. So when you said earlier, everyone smokes in rehab, it made me think of that quote from this piece. And I'll copy and share a link to that for anybody who's interested in kind of doing a little digging in the parallels there as well.
Yeah, and the same thing with people who have mental health issues who tend to be substance users a lot more too.
Yeah, like 90% of people, or something right around 90% of people with schizophrenia smoke.
Yeah, it's all tied together.
So I was going to take a crack at Renee's question here about Juul and wanting to take it apart and see what they've added. And we I believe we're pretty confident in saying we know what is added to these liquids. It's nicotine salts or benzoic acid or some other form. I believe there's more than benzoic acid that can be used.
I think there's a few other ones as well that they utilize.
But as Logan was saying, it changes the pH level. What it does is it takes away that harshness from a high nicotine concentration. And so I used to vape like anywhere from 36 milligrams up to 55. I used to eyeball the nicotine that I added to my bottles. So it was in that range. And that's pretty harsh. I would say we're moving into the next story here. I'm trying to get it in before the top of the hour. But if you wanted to discourage kids from using these products, just put a ton of nicotine in them. It is unpleasant unless you're expecting it or that's what you want.
A ton of freebase. Absolutely.
Yeah. So just freebase nicotine. That was what I enjoyed for a long time. But I mean, again, like there's not much all that special about the formulation for the Juul e-liquid. Nicotine salts are part of tobacco for decades. Yeah. It's just something that it's there. And of course, the mission of Juul was to make a product that would appeal to people who smoke, and it would be an easy thing for them to transition to because, you take the hit off of it and wow, it's a lot like that cigarette experience. So that's what it is. And we can get into the weeds of whether or not that's an appropriate thing to have and all this stuff and what's going on with young people and so on. I have no doubt. I have had my own experience with Juul, and I'm not a huge fan. It's my personal preference. I'm not going to tell anybody else to stay away from it. I think if you smoke cigarettes, Juul and other nicotine salt products are a great thing to try first. I believe that people will be more likely to switch completely to vaping with products like that. But certainly more needs to be done in terms of, I think, education. First and foremost, education about how these products affect us as adults, just people generally, but specifically young people. And I think we should start by telling them the truth. And I don't think that shrouding all of this necessary information under this whole, it's super addictive and it's going to ruin your life, I don't think that's helpful at all. The more honest that we can be about how these chemicals interact with our bodies, the better. And as I promised, moving right along to the next topic, is all about nicotine. And we saw this earlier today or yesterday. Earlier today from a Twitter account called FDA Tracker. Let's see if I can I'm making the wrong screen big.
While you're figuring that out really quick, I just want to address this from Nick as well. And I don't mean to pick on Nick either. I think that's a lot of the reasons people have problems with Juul is because it's 50 milligrams of nicotine. That's a lot of nicotine. It's not so much the 50 milligram or the 5%, which is a more accurate way to describe the amount of nicotine in that pod. It's more about nicotine yield. Like we were talking about what you're actually getting per puff from a Juul pod, nicotine wise, is actually very close to the amount of nicotine that you would get from a puff of a cigarette. And that's why it's really effective at helping people quit smoking. But it's also a really misleading thing to tell people that that's a lot of nicotine. We focus a lot on that amount of nicotine in that pod as opposed to the actual nicotine yield, what you get per puff in your body. And when you compare it to a cigarette, they're almost identical. So when we say that's a lot of nicotine, I guess you could say that about a cigarette too.
Yeah, it's like every other vapor product. It depends on how the person is using it, and I've seen studies that show Juul actually coming in less, lower than cigarettes. They still have the same pattern where it's a big spike up and then a steeper drop off. If you look at just a regular freebase e-liquid that someone's going to use in a mod or even a pod device, it's more kind of steady. Right. Yeah. And that's ultimately, I think that's a really good goal for people to kind of get to that steady supply of nicotine. It's the peaks and valleys that we get from smoking cigarettes or something like salt e-liquid that causes that sensation of craving. But if you're just at a nice even level throughout your day, you can skip the craving and you just get the kind of utility of nicotine. And that's good. So
real quick, he says, however, if they're using it in a mod, that's a sub mod, that's a big problem. Well, yeah, but then that's not a Juul, is it?
That's not that's not a Juul.
You can't fault Juul for somebody doing that.
I do, at my own peril, I do want to bring something up here. There was a lot of backlash against Juul. And by the way, just so that we're clear, nobody in this, we're not full of like love or apologies or anything for Juul. They have made a lot of problems for all of us in the way that they've handled their own company and the way that they lobby. So there's no apology. I'm not sticking up for them at all, but I think they do make a very important product. And it's just gotten a lot of heat lately. And to be honest, they are low hanging fruit for people like Matt Myers and all of the other body parts groups. They have been able to turn Juul into the new boogeyman, and that's what parents know. They have used this situation and basically created a lot of misinformation. You have parents and teachers all across the country who don't know anything about vaping except for Juul, and so they're not able to actually take care of the stuff that's going on in their school or their home. So yeah, I got completely off my track here. Oh yeah, so. When all the backlash started about Juul a few years ago, the really interesting thing was that a lot of the open system folks were putting out their own nicotine salt e-liquids in bottles. And these were, 24 milligrams to 40 something milligrams, all the way up to 60 milligrams. And it's, I personally, I don't have a problem with it. What I have a problem with is people saying, "Oh, Juul is the devil, but here, buy my bottle of salt-based e-liquid." It's kind of, pick a lane here or pick a cause. If you think that Juul is so bad, then why are people selling these other products? It's because they work. It's because it is that almost one-to-one experience that we've had with cigarettes, and that's why they're really important. So yes, we continue to have issues with Juul and the way that they conduct themselves in the policy landscape and in front of consumers and in front of Congress and in front of health officials. But at the end of the day, I think it is a very important product, and I would like to see it remain on the market because it is helping people quit smoking. I would like to see all of the other bottled salt-based e-liquids available as well, and available in various different devices.
I think the point is like we don't necessarily support Juul as a company, but we support consumers' rights to choose and use the products that work for them.
Exactly. So
we don't want to repeat the talking points that the antis are using either. The whole having an issue with it being 50 milligrams of nicotine, which it actually isn't because the pod contains less than a milliliter. So it's only about 43, 45 milligrams.
Something like that. That's why I said 5% is a better way to.
And it's supposed to replace a pack of cigarettes. Well, a pack of cigarettes has somewhere between 100 and 120 milligrams of nicotine in it. And you're complaining about a 50 milligram pod. It's not even filled all the way with, so it's really about 40 milligrams.
Yeah, there's a lot of math you can break down.
It's supposed to have equal pack of cigarettes, but it's a complete myth that it's, it's as much as a pack of cigarettes. Well, yeah, you're not supposed to vape it in one sitting.
Yeah, and the pack equivalency thing, as the USPS astutely pointed out, is just doesn't exist. So it's a marketing line. It's not science. It's not real.
Number of puffs.
It was the marketing language that convinced me to try vaping when I first did, but it does not actually pan out. It's not reality. But I do want to get this one thing in before we finish here.
We've got questions too.
Since we are talking about nicotine and nicotine strengths, first of all, I very much appreciate all of this discussion. Thank you for the comments and the questions about the high nicotine content. It's all very relevant, and we need to talk about it more. So thank you. But Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi from Illinois, a very outspoken anti-nicotine and tobacco congressman, is promising to reintroduce his End Ends Act, which would establish, I haven't looked over the bill, I really don't even want to read it, but it would establish a nicotine cap of 20 milligrams per milliliter. This is a policy. The EU regulations limit nicotine content to 20 milligrams per milliliter, and you can only buy it in 10 milliliter bottles, which, as far as I know, the only somewhat credible justification for that is the idea that a young person, a child, might spill an entire bottle of e-liquid on themselves and experience nicotine poisoning. But again, that actually takes a while for that to absorb through your skin. You can wash it off very quickly. And
just a keynote: how many parents just keep all their cleaning supplies and bleach and things like this readily available under the kitchen sink? It's such a loose argument to be made about nicotine poisoning in youth and things like that. And the 10 mil bottle of nicotine shots is a huge inconvenience for people, in the UK and things like that. They have to deal with that. Also, packaging is a huge problem. We live in a world where we're concerned with waste and recycling and all these things. In every one of those, you've got the bottle, the package, pamphlets that are also part of that. They have to have these little pamphlets in the box. All these little rules and regulations. It's a ton of extra unnecessary waste. It's a huge extra step for people. It's a lot of inconvenience. It's just not, there's really no real justification for it other than, like you said, we're trying to prevent nicotine poisonings in youth, which is such a rare occurrence. It's just silly. It's just something that impedes people from using these products.
Yeah. So Raja Krishnamoorthi wants to bring that arbitrary nicotine limit to the United States. And of course, I would hope that members of Congress would consult with the Food and Drug Administration first. And of course, always, reach out to people who actually use the products. Certainly, if members of Congress would consult with the independent side of the vapor industry, they might learn a lot more than just talking to folks like Matt Myers. So we'll keep an eye on that and see where it goes. Hopefully not very far. It is ultimately a very dangerous, harmful, counterproductive proposal. And so that's that. And one more thing before we get to the Q&A section, just because I want to put this picture up on the internet. A menthol ban is the new saggy pants ban. There you go. I don't know how many people.
And you're welcome.
I like that you had to make sure this picture got up on the stream today.
Oh, whoops! I'm having hold on.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, hold on. Let me fix it. I just boosted my volume up way too loud.
But yeah, I mean, with the 20 milligram cap, how does this prevent illicit markets from capturing a bigger audience of people who want higher milligram nicotine liquids?
Yeah, and it's look, I was trying to shuffle us along to the menthol ban really quick, and make sure that we had some more conversation here about the kind of the inequities here and the racial implications of banning a product that is by and large preferred by 85% of black smokers, black people who smoke, and of course all of the unnecessary interactions between law enforcement that can result from something like this. And if you don't think it's an issue, well, remember that we did in several places pass saggy pants bans, which is absolutely absurd and doesn't make any sense. And I cannot believe these are actual laws in the United States of America. But it is in itself. I mean, this is something that has this is clearly targeted at what the code for black is urban. So the urban hip hop culture and all of that. Being able to stop somebody on the street and fine them $20 for not having their pants pulled all the way up is ridiculous, and it will obviously be enforced disproportionately on certain types of people. So sure. There's my little
there's a problem when the government is not regulating whether or not you are supposed to wear clothing, but how you choose to wear your clothing. That's you want to talk about government overreach?
Yeah.
Sag your pants in defiance, friends. That's what I'm doing.
We deal with that in schools all the time, and a lot of it's very much skewed towards girls who can't dress certain ways because apparently that's going to excite the boys, because boys can't control themselves.
Yeah, it's because men write these laws. That's the issue there. Men write these rules.
And that the whole thing with the menthol, going back to that, is that Desmond Jensen or whatever.
Oh, you froze
whatever
again.
His name is.
There we go.
Putting, having menthol cigarettes is racist. What's that?
No,
did I break again? Jesus, sorry. Lord's name in vain. My apologies to the Christians. Desmond Jensen. Was that his name?
Yeah, and we can stop saying his name or giving any oxygen to that man. He is his opinion is in lockstep with all the other tobacco controllers. There's nothing special about it, nothing new. And so, as far as anybody concerned, he's one more voice on the prohibitionist bandwagon. I don't feel that he has offered any enlightened perspective to this, just like everybody else who seems to be in favor of this ban. So. Thanks for bringing it up. But moving right along, maybe we can get into the Q&A portion.
He'll just ban you anyhow. But I just had made a point to him that, because he's trying to make this point, and other ones are trying to make this point that, they're not going to send the FDA after consumers. That's just a straw man argument. It's like, no, that's a straw man argument because nobody's thinking that they're going to send the FDA after consumers. What's going to happen is you pass this law, then you've got people going, look, there's a lucrative black market now for menthol cigarettes. I could use some extra cash. Now, next thing you know, you've got the cops, coming after you. So it's disproportionately going to hit low income people, and which is disproportionately people of color. So it's just that they make the straw man argument and then accuse us of doing the straw man argument. It's insane.
It's absurd. And for somebody like him and some other journalists who are writing about this and other people, who are certainly accredited and credentialed experts in tobacco control. The Tobacco Control Act does not authorize FDA to enforce on individual consumers. So menthol ban or not, FDA has no authority to enforce on you and me. In fact, you and I can import tobacco products, and as long as it gets through customs, FDA can't do a thing about it to individual consumers. So yeah, it's nothing new. And ultimately what is going to happen is in something like 2/3 of the states where purchase, use, and possession of tobacco products by people under the age of 21 or 18 or whatever, that is criminalized. And law enforcement, people with guns, are going to be enforcing that law. And the one thing, I don't know if I'm actually going to include this, but in a place like New York City, where the NYPD is oftentimes referred to as the mayor's private army, I think we all have to wonder, do we want that organization enforcing a ban on menthol cigarettes? Because it's not licensed retailers that are going to get in the most trouble for something like this. It's the informal retailers. It's the informal importers and distributors and manufacturers. They're the ones that are going to end up getting killed, incarcerated, or whatever, selling a product for which there is a noticeable amount of demand and was previously legal. And the people who end up sort of participating in that are disproportionately people of color, people from low-income communities, because for them, because of like all of those sort of underlying issues that we discussed before, that's, for a lot of people, that's their opportunity. That's their way out of
Sure.
poverty and whatever. So it's unfair all around. It's almost this. I don't know if entrapment's the right word to say, but you've sort of people are up against a wall here, economically, socially, and now it's just one more crime. It's just one more reason to stop people on the street and fine them, cite them, throw them in jail, or kill them.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's going to be the next Eric Garner?
Exactly.
Exactly. I use that all the time. That was just, that wasn't the FDA enforcing anything. That was a state level law enforcement in New York City.
That was NYPD.
Yeah.
Yeah, NYPD,
Exactly.
New York City.
So
I think I use that example.
And New York City has its own policy. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, instead of banning menthols, why don't we just make sure that people have a safer alternative to a combustible product and then promote that?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that just be so much easier and better for everyone?
Yeah. Why don't we just
do that?
That's the irony.
Let the products that were going head to head with cigarettes and actually, increasing the reduction in smoking prevalence, increasing the reduction in sales of cigarettes. Let's let those products back on the market again.
Yeah. And let's not add additional taxes to these things that are helping people who are already low income.
Well, that's crazy where you keep seeing this argument where they're saying, oh, well, if we ban menthol and if we reduce all the nicotine, then people can move over to safer stuff if they don't quit altogether. And it's like, but you're trying to ban that too and make it expensive and get rid of anything that's appealing about it with flavors and nicotine strengths. So where exactly are they going to go?
I don't necessarily know if entrapment is the right word that Alex used earlier either, but it feels like that's the same thing. That's exactly what it is. Like, hey, we're gonna do all this stuff to make the bad product that you're using unappealing. We want to encourage you to go use safer products, but just so you know, we're going to ban those too.
I just to throw one example on this, some concrete example of how tone deaf public health can be in this issue. When Rhode Island banned flavors in response to the lung injuries, they had I guess it was the director of the state Department of Health. She sat at the microphone after former Governor Gina Raimondo, who is now secretary of something or whatever. She's in the Biden administration. So they brought up this director of public health in the state of Rhode Island. And her advice to people who were going to lose access to flavored vapor products was, well, we have the 1-800-QUIT line. There's nicotine replacement therapies and other resources available to you. Not knowing, because of course, these folks don't actually talk to consumers, not knowing that many of the people who have switched to vaping will tell you it was the only thing that worked. We have tried the gum, the patch, the counseling, the hypnosis, snapping a rubber band on your wrist, chewing on a piece of celery and taking a walk around the neighborhood. All of those things. We've tried them and they didn't work. Some things we tried in combination. It was not successful until we tried vaping. So it's just that tone deaf advice of like, well, you can use all the things that we've provided whatever.
Yeah, and like their best advice is like, yeah, maybe you didn't succeed this time, but just try again.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that didn't work. Try again.
And according to the CDC,
it just fails 93% of the time.
Yeah. So anyway, do we want to do Q&A and wrap this thing up?
Excellent discussion, everyone. This is a really good one. This is a really good one this week. We had a really great discussion. But yeah, definitely time for some Q&A. I know we've had a bunch of questions during the show. Yep. So maybe Kristen can start pulling up some good ones and we can take a crack at them here. I'm
starting from back about an hour ago almost now, because people were putting, please, if you want, do at CASA, so I know that you're actually asking us the question and not just kind of chit-chatting with each other. It's kind of hard to determine whether you're actually asking a question or not. But I've got one other one coming up for Nate too. So Robert asked a while ago, does the shipping ban affect supplies for DIY juice makers like myself?
Regrettably, I don't think I have a solid answer for this, but I do remember people talking about this probably within the past couple of weeks. I don't know. I think actually, Kristen, you might have seen this. Have some of the suppliers in DIY changed their policy with regard to shipping?
Yeah. Some have not. So it's sort of hit and miss. I would recommend going on to maybe some DIY groups on, Facebook or ECF and see what they're doing, because it is hit and miss. Some people aren't even sending things like cotton to make coils. I mean, it's so it runs the gamut. It's hit or miss.
I think a lot of companies are just kind of taking that precautionary approach because maybe they don't fully understand either. My understanding, and again, this is just my understanding, is that it affects the nicotine, specifically the liquid nicotine, and not necessarily like PG or VG based flavorings or PG or VG in general, because that would be something. Those are ingredients that are used not specifically just by us, but across food industry and all sorts of things as well. So banning the shipping of those products is a much bigger deal. We're not the only industry that we're not industry, CASA specifically, but the vaping industry is not the only ones that use those products. But I think it does affect liquid nicotine. But then again, there's also agriculture and other sorts of things that use it as well. So I'm also not clear, but I think if it does, it would probably target the nicotine more than anything.
It's sort of a wait and see type thing too, because a lot of it is sold for research and stuff, and you can just buy it online. There's websites that sell nicotine that have nothing to do with vaping. So if you're buying from a DIY vaping supply site that says DIY vaping, that's probably going to be affected. But if it's just chemical supply company,
if you're somehow registered maybe as like a
and there were a lot of those, and that's where
supplier,
DIY started
like specifically for vaping, marketed specifically for vaping, there may be some implications there.
And that's how back in the day you couldn't just buy nicotine for vaping. I mean, like you can now for DIY. DIY was truly DIY. There was no DIY supply company, and you could get nicotine the same way. So it's probably just going to go back to that. Really, you might lose a lot of DIY companies, but again, like what Logan's saying is probably not for the flavorings and stuff like that, because again, that can be used for candy, that can be used for baking, that can be used for all sorts for candle making. So that I don't think you're going to lose supply that way.
Yeah,
I think there might be a little bit of a warning here as well. One of the things that we're most concerned about is that in the wake of all of these bans, that people will go out and buy flavorings at the grocery store. And people need to be very careful about that. I'm not the DIY expert, but certainly no oil-based flavorings. That will kill you. We went through that in 2019. You will get sick and possibly be killed. So
it's really apparent too for anybody who skipped middle school chemistry. If you were to add or mix with an oil-based aromatic of flavoring in your VG and PG, you will see that separation. You will see that oil is not water soluble like the rest of the ingredients in e-liquid, and you will very clearly see the separation. And so if you do that, or you see someone who's mixing, or they buy these things, please warn them. Like or if you buy e-liquid, from a friend or Joe up the road or something, God forbid, and you see that your e-liquid has separated, please do not vape it. That is oil. And you absolutely can,
and possibly THC.
I mean, if you're after THC, I don't have any problem with THC, but
right, but it's possibly THC. You maybe think you're getting nicotine, and you're not.
Yeah,
and also that might be an opportunity for vape shops too. They might want to start catering. I mean, they cater to coil builders. They might want to start catering to liquid build, DIY liquid people too, and carrying their stuff. And if it's just a little bit cheaper for them, that might be an opportunity. Renee says, asks, are they still trying to classify vapor the same as a tobacco product? There's no tobacco in there.
I saw that pop up, and I wanted to take it, if that's okay. The answer is at the federal level, they already have. This was the 2016 deeming rule, which folded vapor products and other new nicotine products in with all of the other tobacco regulations. This is according to the federal law, which defines tobacco as anything made or derived from tobacco. The nicotine comes from tobacco, therefore these are considered tobacco products. This is an ongoing battle at the state and local level as well. There are efforts throughout the states to define vapor products separately. One of the things that we see, probably like the laziest way to make a bill, is to just change the definition of tobacco product. And in states, that is simply a matter of adding e-cigarette, e-cigar, etc. And so that they'll add that to the tobacco product definition. And usually they do that so that they can very quickly and efficiently fold vapor products in with things like place bans or taxes or other regulations. So yeah, we've had this conversation for so many years. And I know that within the community, things are kind of divided on this. There was actually one comment onto the deeming regulations that I feel, maybe I'm misremembering it, but I know there was at least one organization that brought up the issue of the intent of Congress when they passed the Tobacco Control Act, which was that they were arguing that the Congress was only enacting this law to affect leaf tobacco. And so this is one of those things where, the scholars and the legislators and the lawyers will get together and try to figure out the language. But it is pretty clear at the federal level, made or derived from tobacco. We've seen other states adopt that language. And so obviously it does include nicotine. The stumbling point is, well, what about the synthetic nicotine? FDA has put out their response to that question and saying that they don't think that they have the regulatory authority over synthetic nicotine, but it's something that they can change through rulemaking. So if synthetic nicotine takes off, it's still one of those things that's really expensive to produce. There's not a lot of profit margin there. But when and if it does take off as a substitute, first of all, there are new questions of how synthetic nicotine affects our bodies. There's a lot more research that needs to go into that. But also FDA could swoop in through rulemaking and fold synthetic nicotine under the tobacco regulations. So I hope that gave you more than you were asking.
Give me just a second.
Good me. All right. So Nick had a question. He says, would you three agree that until we all come under the same umbrella, speaking the same message, and using the money donated by companies and individuals better you're going? I'm a little lost with that one. She's trying to figure out how it can be more effective. So I guess something about coming under the same umbrella. I'm not sure what you mean there, Nick.
Well, I think, I mean, this has been an issue. If I'm just kind of speculating, let's all get on the same message and let's all be reading from the same hymnal, basically. This has been a problem since the beginning. It goes all the way back to, folks, at least once a year we get, it's slowed down now, but, we have somebody that comes up and says, if we just stop calling them e-cigarettes, they'd probably leave us alone. That ship sailed a long time ago. But, in terms of, yeah, I mean, in terms of messaging, I mean, that's just a minor kind of thing that we bring up. It's kind of funny now. But in terms of messaging, I agree. It would be great if we were all sort of on the same page here. Just looking at the people that I follow on Twitter, folks who are supportive of tobacco harm reduction, they themselves are coming out in support of a menthol ban. And to me, I like the diversity of thought. I think we can have a robust debate about this. The most important thing is that we continue having this discussion and having this debate. I would rather have a debate about a menthol ban with folks who are supportive of tobacco harm reduction than have this sort of like us, this huge us versus them, pro tobacco harm reduction versus prohibition. I think we can have a much more critical conversation about things like that within the community. But I think, when it comes to funding and how we direct those funds, we're up against organizations that bring in millions of dollars every year. And of course, Michael Bloomberg committed I was just going to drop the B word. Yeah. to banning flavors. I mean, we've never seen that kind of money. I don't think actually in the 10 years that CASA has been around, I don't think we've raised $1 million. If you could run through that exercise of like give me $1 million, what am I going to do with it? Well, I'm going to hire a government relations team. I'm going to put lobbyists in certain states. I'm going to get Kristen a staff. I'm going to get Danielle a staff, and get myself a staff, other than Kristen. So there is certainly. Right now, it's not a matter of efficiency. Well, efficiency is always an issue, but for us, it's not necessarily a matter of efficiency, and it really is a matter of funding, and we just don't have it. But I agree. I think it would be great if we could sort of synchronize the message better across all groups. Right now, one of the reasons why CASA exists is because industry is prone to making arguments that actually don't benefit consumers. You have to remember that industry stakeholders are people who literally have a stake in the business. It's not necessarily their consumers. And so that's why I had brought up several weeks ago, when we have these tax battles, it's the industry ultimately that is negotiating with lawmakers. It's not consumers. And of course, this has been brought up in industry conferences in the past. Lawmakers don't really want to hear no. They've heard enough of it. And so when the consumer voice walks up and says, we don't want to pay extra taxes, the lawmakers will move on to the industry who are willing to negotiate. And so it's, even though we find ourselves being somewhat ignored, our voices do matter, and we do get attention paid to us frequently, even if people aren't willing to admit it. And I think it's the consumer voice that ultimately inspires some lawmakers to take a much more critical look at this and figure out how they can make policies that are beneficial. So yeah, it's the industry consumer divide is something that's going to continue. I think generally there is a lot of crossover. It's more crossover than not between the message that we're sending and the message that industry is sending. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, we are moving in the right direction in terms of a community advocating for beneficial policies.
And I just want to say that, I saw Nick had made a comment too about, where did all the donations go? And, why don't we have 3 lobbyists working it for us right now? Well, Alex just kind of explained. I think we finally hit a total of $1 million last year. Wow. I think we finally exceeded, might have been the year before, but I think it was last year, because I know 2 years ago I was showing somebody we hadn't even hit $1 million yet. And that's total of what we've collected. $1 million. I mean, could you just imagine
since 2009?
Since 2009. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're not getting all that money. And you may have meant, okay, so all the industry organizations, well, we can't answer that question. Why, and they did try lobbying and stuff, but, again, it's hard to have them agree on everything. And again, the industry, while we're partners with them, and a lot of stuff you guys don't know, a lot of stuff happens behind the scenes. So, I mean, Alex is talking to people all the time. He's talking to industry people. He's talking to other organizations, state level organizations, so we try to coordinate as much as we can, and they know that they can approach us. I mean, I think we're very approachable in that sense. And we've tried to stay out of any drama. We worked really hard to do that as well over the years. But like Alex said, it's important that we have our own voice, because we've had so many things. The vape shops are throwing the online people under the bus. The online people are throwing the vape shops under the bus. Or the convenience stores, or and they're saying, okay, well, we'll pay taxes. We don't mind, because we're just going to pass it on to the consumers. We need to have a voice. That's why we can't people are just like, oh, why don't you just join this industry group? Just become a subsidiary of them. It's like, no, we need to be separate. There's a reason why we're separate, because we need a voice.
I do want to clarify something that you just said, because I got politely called out for it a couple weeks ago. Okay. This idea that the industry folks are kind of throwing consumers under the bus with the tax and saying like, well, we don't mind so much because we're just going to pass it on to consumers. I prefer, honestly, to classify that more as industry has their back up against the wall. There's really no other move for them. They feel it there's a paperwork burden involved here. You have to go through your accountant. You are probably paying extra money in order to handle all of this record keeping. So it's not just something that's totally painless for the industry. It's just, I think the more accurate way to talk about it is, for lawmakers, even for lawmakers who are trying to twist this narrative into like, ooh, big bad industry is only worried about profits over public health. At the end of the day, it's the lawmakers themselves who are only interested in the money. That's kind of their main job. It's officials who go to state houses. It's the budget is like the biggest thing every year. How do you spend the money? And so that's kind of why it ultimately ends up, unfortunately, boiling down to this conversation between the people who are making the revenue off of selling the products and the people who want to spend that revenue on whatever state programs or building roads. So I just wanted to make it clear that it's not CASA's position that the industry is a bunch of cold-hearted bastards that are just willing to throw consumers under the bus.
And when I say industry, I'm sorry I do this, and I should stop doing it. But when I say industry, I tend to not mean vape shops and small business owners. I mean, to me, they're just vapors who started a business to help people. I don't think that they think that way. I think I'm thinking more like, the views, Reynolds doesn't care if they're passing taxes on to us, that kind of thing. But they're not really. So I'm glad you clarified that, because I'm not thinking that vape shop owners all want to screw their consumers. That's not at all what I was thinking when I was speaking those words. Okay, I'm going to move on now before I put my other foot in my mouth. All right, so this is, Philip said, can we come up with some pro-vaping ads on YouTube to combat current brainwashing? If they can make some scammer crypto ads, then CASA can create some logic-based ads.
Scammer crypto ads. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've seen some scammer crypto ads out there, and I'm surprised, honestly. Actually, I'm not surprised. I think the allure of doubling your money if you hand somebody $5,000 worth of whatever is pretty great. Again, for us, I think, number one, it comes down to a few things. The first one is talent. We certainly have some very talented people between Kristen and Danielle, I think, who can make these types of videos. But for you guys, this is a matter of time. That stuff does not happen easily. And it's also a matter of funding. I would very much like to pay Kristen to be able to produce this content. I know that your time is valuable. And so it really kind of comes down to resources. And I know I had this conversation with Danielle probably, I think at some point this week. Yes, she does excellent work with the videos that she's put out. If you haven't seen the Truth About Vaping videos, I strongly recommend that you check those out. And also to this point, we and like anybody else on YouTube, encourage people to like and subscribe. One thing that we can do is actively promote and like the content that's already out there. And so search it out. There is a lot of content on YouTube made from both consumers and companies. I think it was that there was the controversy. I think it was Dash Vapes got their channel taken
out of
down.
Canada. Yeah,
I know.
I don't know if their old channel is back up, but they do have a channel that is up on YouTube. I don't know. It might have a different name. It might be a new channel. But they are back on YouTube.
It was Dash Vapes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
YouTube had YouTube knocked them down. Took down their channel. There was a whole big mess around it. I think it's a different channel. From my understanding, is they just started a new channel.
Well, just to throw that out as an example, I know that he was very good about putting information out there, ways for people to get engaged, and explaining the issues in a little bit more depth. That channel was a good resource until YouTube canned it. But all of that to say, again, a lot of the content is up there, and I think it's an excellent idea for people to like and share. And give it the views that it needs and bump it up in the algorithm if that's even possible, because they're talking about nicotine. I don't know.
Yeah.
The algorithm on YouTube.
We have,
like us.
Yeah. And before we started, when we started doing this live podcast again, I went through and I tried to sort of clean up our YouTube channel. So, there's a whole section on testimonials. We would love to have your testimonials. Tag us in it or whatever, so it comes up, or email us. Do a testimonial. The Golden Oldies, right? We've been using the Golden Oldies tour and linking to them. We're trying to give them a little boost. Go to them and give them your testimonial. Hearing the stories and hearing that we're real people and we're not just a bunch of shills and bots is probably better than any kind of Madison Avenue ad that we could ever pay $1 million for. It really is. I mean, we've had lawmakers tell us that they don't want to hear from businesses. They don't want to hear from lobbyists. They want to hear from their constituent.
Yeah.
So that's oh boy, you're going to have fun with this one, Alex.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I actually want to take a quick crack at this too.
Do you want to? Okay. So she says, I think we should try to apply mods as a medical device, harm reduction device, because in Europe they have them in hospitals.
So they almost were. They almost were at one point medical devices. But I think one of the biggest issues, if vapor products were to be lumped into medical devices, is diversity and innovation, right? Stifling both massively. One of the things about vaping that works for a lot of people is that there are so many products that suit their needs. There's different products out there for anyone. When you look at the track record of, say, FDA approving a medication, you're looking at somewhere in the realm of, on average, like 8 years before that product actually makes it to market. Could you just imagine waiting 8 years for a new mod to hit the market? So you have a lot of stifling for innovation, safety features. Things move much slower. That's a huge issue in the span that vaping has been around. Because it is not a medical device, innovation grew rapidly. Safety features specifically were something that were implemented very quickly as we moved along. Things got much safer. We moved from the screwdriver. I don't know how many people remember the screwdriver mechanical mod to now where we have devices with temp control settings, short circuit protection, all sorts of things that keep people much safer. If this had been a medical device from the get-go, we would still kind of be in the screwdriver era, So yeah, I think that's a big thing. And then the whole vape shops in hospitals, it's not because Europe classifies them as a medical device. They're still considered a tobacco product. There's kind of a synergy and a relationship between those vape shops and the hospitals that they are in. And that's, a lot of that is the result of them actually promoting the use of these products to their citizens for quitting smoking and promoting their use as a safer product. And I think it's a great thing to see vape shops in hospitals from a harm reduction standpoint. You're meeting people where they're at. If they're at a hospital because they're experiencing complications and things like this, maybe they're breathing or stuff like that, you're meeting people where they're at. They want to quit smoking. Well, hey, look, downstairs in our lobby. And I know for sure there are a lot of regulations and things that go into those locations as well, being in hospitals. So I think it's probably a good thing that we're not a medical device. I'm very thankful for the innovation that has happened in this space because we are not a medical device. And in regards to the vape shops and hospitals, it's not because they're medical devices there either. There's a relationship that has taken place in that space.
I did want to jump in and very quickly make the very clear distinction between Britain and Europe. As far as I know, it's England that is the only place where we see vape shops in hospitals, and that is because of the work of a lot of advocates in the UK, some of the industry, and of course Public Health England, formerly Public Health England, being open to this and having critical discussions about this. E-cigarette summit was kind of a driver of a lot of policy discussions very early on. And so that's where we see this. And I just to add, another layer to this, as Logan said, going through the medicines pathway in the United States will take many years longer. We are already seeing that sort of delay in innovation. IQOS is a good example. In Japan, I think they're on like version 4 or 5 of the IQOS. In the United States, we are just now seeing version 1. And so we have not progressed in terms of performance innovations or safety innovations with that heat not burn product. And of course, this was something that was part of the lobbying message that was when VTA did their Hill Day a couple of years ago, that the FDA regulations are stifling innovation, as you said. The rest of the world has these new safety features on their mods, but you can't get them legally in the United States. The other kind of issue with this is that we don't want to see just medicine type products. I think it's very important. I would like to see a device approved as a pharmaceutical, a therapeutic drug or device. I think there are probably millions of people waiting to see a product like that. Millions of people who smoke would be more comfortable having that product handed to them by a pharmacist rather than
there's that layer of trust that goes into that. Yeah.
Right. So
they don't know any better.
Regardless. Yeah.
I think it's necessary, but I don't want to see that be the only pathway. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Did that answer your question, Renee?
I hope that did. To Jason Wirtz, I absolutely do vape, bro.
I was going to put that up.
I know that you asked a couple of times, and I just wanted to address it. I do vape, bro.
He tries to be discreet. I'm not even sure if he was talking to you or what. He didn't at Kasa that one, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we clarified that, yes, I absolutely do. Why? Because it helps me not smoke. That is why. All right, cool. Well, this was an excellent discussion today.
We convinced
everyone.
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. Awesome.
I like it. I like having these two-way discussions where it's not just a bunch of random people on a video screen telling people what to think. Thank you for all of your questions.
Yes, thank you guys.
It's awesome. Absolutely. We love to get your questions. We really do. There's a lot out there to talk about.
I think that's going to wrap it up for us this week. Sorry, everybody there. My brain is mush today. I've tried my best, but I think that's where we're going to wrap up this stream. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today and joining us for this live discussion. Greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for being here and for all of your excellent questions during chat. I hope that we were able to answer all of them. For the podcast listeners, because this does get turned into a shorter version over on the SoundCloud and on other apps where you can tune in as well, where we go through and Alex does the legislative rundown, all the need to know information for podcast listeners. If you want to hear the rest of this fantastic discussion that we have had here today, the links will be available in the description below this podcast on SoundCloud for both Facebook and YouTube, where you can tune in and catch the rest of the show. So thank you again, everybody. And I guess I'll let Alex, Kristen, final thoughts for today.
Final thoughts. We'll bookend the episode with more Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there.
All the moms.
Thank you for tuning in. And I guess don't raise your kids to be cow people. I don't know how we say that nowadays. But thank you, moms.
I don't know. I was trying to make
Alex. Don't write jokes live. Thank you, moms, and thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the weekend. And if you find yourself in front of a TV this weekend, they're racing at Darlington, which is going to be exciting. So there you go.
Awesome. Yeah.
Kristen, final thoughts for today?
Just keep the questions coming. Keep learning. Don't assume you think you know everything, because you don't. There's so many other stories out there that I can't tell you what I've learned over 10 years of doing this, and we want to share that with you. So come back every week. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more out every week. Keep with the questions. Please make sure if you haven't joined CASA that you officially join, so you get our emails. Join your state Facebook groups. If you're on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, CASA. And Alex and Logan and I all have our own Twitter accounts as well. We'd love to talk to you. Get the word out there. Get your story out there. Together, collectively, we are a much stronger voice than individuals. So keep it going.
Awesome. Fantastic. And yeah, while everybody's, if you're still here, please, if you haven't yet, like, share this, and subscribe, turn that notification bell on so you guys know when we go live. It is the same time, Saturday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. over on the West Coast. Everywhere in between, you got to figure it out on your own. I'm terrible at time zones. If you live in the mountains somewhere in the middle of America, I can't help you. You're going to have to do some math. But thank you one last time, everybody. I really quick, I just want to thank Mark for this. He said he's been sharing this in the vape shop and people are really enjoying it. So thank you, Mark.
Awesome.
That's fantastic. Much appreciated.
And
that's where we're going to wrap this one up. Thank you, everybody. I hope that you guys have a safe rest of your weekend. Take care.